All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at agentic AI
Ooh, interesting.
and how it's impacting scientific research.
Hmm.
We've all heard of AI being used in science for things like analyzing data.
Right.
But agentic AI, this is really a different beast.
It is, yeah.
We're talking about AI that can reason, plan, and make decisions on its own
Mm-hmm.
about how to tackle things like even coming up with new research ideas, sifting
Hmm.
through all those scientific papers,
Yeah.
designing experiments, and even figuring out what the data means.
Exactly. And the exciting thing is this isn't just like something we're speculating about for the future. This is actually happening now.
Yeah.
There was this really in-depth survey that came out recently looking at agentic AI in scientific discovery.
Oh, wow.
And it showed that this technology is already having a big impact in fields like chemistry, biology, materials science,
Mhm.
all sorts of different areas. And, our goal with this deep dive today is to really understand that impact. Like, what does it actually mean?
Exactly. And we want to, for you listening, take all of this complex stuff
Oh,
and
yeah.
give you the essential insights, a clear picture
Mm.
of where things stand right now, what the limitations are, and what the future might look like. So,
Yeah.
with that said, let's kind of unpack the basics a little
Yeah.
bit. When we talk about agent and agency in this
Mm.
context, what are we really talking about?
So, the idea of an agent itself isn't totally new. If you think about it in a simple way, an agent is anything that can act. So, agency is really just that ability to take action, to do something.
Okay.
But when we're talking about AI agents, we're talking about these intelligent systems that can actually operate on their own,
Right.
and make decisions based on what they perceive in their environment.
Hmm.
And that environment, it could be a physical lab,
Yeah.
it could be a computer simulation, or it could be some kind of hybrid of the two.
Okay.
But the key here with agentic AI is this idea of embodied intelligence, that
Yeah.
the AI is actively interacting with its surroundings to achieve a goal.
So it's not just like passively processing information, it's
She'll
actually
do something, yeah.
involved.
Right.
Now, you mentioned this idea of single agent versus multi-agent systems. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, so that's a really important distinction. Single agent systems are kind of designed to tackle a specific problem on their own. They don't need to collaborate with other agents, although they might learn from human input.
Okay.
And these systems are great for very focused tasks. Think about an AI that's meant to predict the outcome of a chemical reaction
Right.
or analyze a specific type of biological data.
Hmm.
And we're already seeing applications like this in scientific discovery, but also in things like web searching, gaming,
Oh, yeah.
even in healthcare, they're using these kinds of single agent systems.
So one AI, one specific job.
Exactly.
Okay, what about multi-agent systems?
So multi-agent systems, these involve two or more agents that are actually working together to
Hmm.
solve a problem. And this idea actually draws inspiration from this concept called the Society of Mind, which was proposed by Marvin Minsky.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and basically, he suggested that intelligence itself can emerge from the collaboration of many smaller, specialized components.
Right.
So, in a multi agent system, each agent might have a specific area of expertise, and then they all kind of come together and work together
Mm.
to solve a bigger, more complex problem.
Like a team of scientists, each with their own specialty.
Exactly. And we're starting to see this in scientific discovery,
Right.
but also in fields like software development,
Yeah.
healthcare, where you might have different agents handling different parts of a bigger challenge.
That sounds really powerful, but also maybe a little tricky to manage.
Yeah, the challenge is really in the communication and the information sharing between the agents. Like, how do you make sure that they're all on the same page?
Right, right. It's like, you get a bunch of brilliant people in a room,
Right.
and they've all got their own ideas.
Yeah.
How do you make sure
Yeah, exactly.
that they actually are working together
So
effectively?
I've got to get them to talk to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this survey that you mentioned about agentic AI and scientific discovery, how do they break down this landscape?
So they looked at the level of independence that these AI systems have and how they actually interact with human researchers. And they broadly categorized them into two different types: fully autonomous systems and human AI collaborative systems.
Okay.
But in both cases, the overall goal is to kind of enhance what human scientists can do.
Right.
So it's about helping us formulate better hypotheses, design experiments, analyze data more efficiently, and even streamline that whole process of reviewing existing research, which, can be a real pain.
It can be really time consuming just reading through all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the fully autonomous systems. What do those look like in action?
So fully autonomous systems, these are kind of the starships of the AI world. They're designed to handle entire scientific workflows with minimal human intervention. They can understand natural language instructions, plan out the steps, and make decisions to complete complex tasks,
Wow.
all the way from that initial idea,
Yeah.
potentially, to actually generating a research report.
So they're like almost like little AI scientists running around doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
So give some concrete examples. What are some of these autonomous AI systems actually doing in science today?
So one really cool example is called Co-Scientist.
Geoscientists. Oh, yeah.
This system uses GPT-4, which we've all heard of, right? It's a
Yes.
very powerful language model. So it uses that to plan, design, and execute chemical experiments. And they actually had it plan and optimize a palladium-catalyzed cross-coupling reaction, which is a pretty complex organic chemistry process.
Wow.
And it was successful.
So this AI is like actually guiding and figuring out lab work.
Yeah, in many cases, it's not physically doing the experiments yet, but it's
Yeah.
designing the steps, and it can even direct robotic systems to carry them out.
That is amazing.
It's pretty cool. And then you've got ChemCrow, which also uses GPT-4, but it integrates it with a bunch of specialized tools.
Okay.
Like 18 different tools that are relevant to things like organic synthesis, drug discovery, materials design, so it can kind of navigate the world of chemical research much more effectively.
So it's got this broad toolkit to draw from.
Exactly, yeah. And then there's Prot Agents, which is focused on protein design and molecular modeling.
Pro agents.
So it uses large language models, reinforcement learning, to optimize protein structures, predict how they fold, and even simulate how they're going to interact with other molecules.
And that's huge for drug development,
It's
right?
huge for drug development, yeah. And just understanding biological processes in general.
Yeah, wow.
And then in the world of materials science, you've got LMMP, which stands for the Large Language Model for Materials Prediction.
LMP, okay.
Yeah, and it uses this technique called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, which is kind of like, if you think about it, when a researcher goes to the literature to look for information, it's kind of doing the same thing.
Right.
It's going out, pulling in information, and using that to make predictions about the properties of materials and how to optimize their formulations.
So almost like an AI that's read every material science paper ever written.
Yeah, it's kind of building up this knowledge base that it can draw from.
So it's really pushing the boundaries here.
Yeah.
So what are the main strengths of these fully autonomous systems, and where do they still have limitations?
Well, their biggest strengths is efficiency. They're great at tasks that are well-defined, that are repetitive, that require a lot of precision.
Yeah.
They can speed up research significantly by automating things that would take humans forever to do.
Right.
However, they often lack that kind of broad interdisciplinary knowledge and the intuitive leaps that human researchers can make.
Right.
So they might not be as good at coming up with those really creative, out-of-the-box ideas.
So you can automate a lot, but that human spark is still important.
Exactly.
Okay. So now let's talk about those human AI collaborative systems. How are they different?
So these are all about partnerships, right? It's about combining the strengths of AI, like
Right.
the computational power, the ability to process huge amounts of data with human expertise, the creativity, the critical thinking, and the deep understanding that we bring to the table.
It's like a true collaboration, not just AI taking over.
Exactly.
What are some examples of these collaborations actually playing out in research?
So one interesting example is called Virtual Lab,
Okay.
and this is designed to support these interdisciplinary scientific research teams, where you've got people from different backgrounds all coming together to solve a complex problem.
Right, yeah.
And it actually was used in the design of nanobody binders for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which was obviously a very interdisciplinary effort. And then you've got BioPlanner, which is an AI tool that actually helps researchers design experimental protocols. So it can take a researcher's goal and translate that into this detailed step-by-step plan for how to actually do the experiments in the lab.
Oh, wow. So it's like an AI research assistant that helps with all the logistics.
Exactly, yeah. And then there's CALMS, which stands for Context-Aware Language Model for Science.
CALMS, okay.
Yeah, and this acts kind of like an AI lab assistant that can interact with scientists in real time, even with lab instruments. It can provide guidance, help interpret data as it's being generated,
Okay.
and optimize workflows.
So it's like having another pair of hands in the lab.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And more recently, they've introduced Agent
The
Laboratory.
agent laboratory.
And this is a framework that's designed to take research ideas from humans
Hmm.
and then autonomously handle the literature review, conduct experiments, and even draft the research report.
Wow. So that's a lot of autonomy.
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
even within a collaborative framework.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the main benefits of these human AI collaborations, and what are some of the limitations that we're still seeing?
So the benefits are pretty clear. You can really accelerate research, you can enhance your experimental designs,
Yeah.
get better data, optimize decision making.
Hmm.
And this is happening across fields like genetics, material science, chemistry.
Hmm.
However, these systems still rely on human oversight to validate the findings and guide the overall direction of the research.
Right.
The quality of the data that they use is really important,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be a challenge to understand the AI's reasoning.
So it's not just blindly trusting the AI.
Exactly.
Okay. Now let's talk about a very specific part of the research process, the literature review.
Ugh, yes.
How is agentic AI changing the way scientists approach this often very time-consuming task?
So the literature review is really the foundation of scientific discovery, right? It's how we build on existing knowledge, spot trends, evaluate different methods,
Mm.
and figure out what the gaps are. But the problem is the volume of scientific publications is exploding.
It's overwhelming.
It's absolutely overwhelming. It's almost impossible to keep up manually. So Agentic AI is offering this potential solution by automating the process of finding, extracting, and synthesizing information from all this research.
So instead of spending weeks just reading papers, the AI can do a lot of that initial heavy lifting.
Exactly. And the idea is to shift the bottleneck from gathering information to analyzing it and generating new hypotheses.
Okay.
So there are several frameworks being developed for this. One is called Silent LLM.
Silent LLM.
Yeah, and it's designed to enhance the AI's understanding of scientific literature. So it's continuously learning from scientific texts, and that improves its ability to do things like classify documents, summarize findings, answer questions based on the research.
Okay.
But it's important to remember it's only as good as the data that it's trained on.
You're putting garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
Exactly.
What else is being developed in this area?
Yeah. So another one is called Lit Search, and this is interesting because it's actually a benchmark. It's designed to evaluate how well AI systems can retrieve relevant information when you give them these complex search queries.
Oh, okay.
So it focuses on machine learning and natural language processing, and it provides a standardized way to compare different AI approaches.
So you can see which ones are really good at finding the right information.
Exactly, yeah. But it is currently limited to those specific areas.
Okay.
Then there's Research Arena, which is another benchmark. This one focuses on how well LLM-based agents can conduct academic surveys. So it breaks down the process into finding information, selecting the most important parts,
Okay.
organizing it in a structured way. It helps to assess AI capabilities in these structured reviews, but it can still struggle with the more unstructured aspects of real-world research.
Right, because research is messy, right?
It is, yeah. And then there's CiteM, which focuses on a very specific but crucial part, attributing scientific claims to their original sources accurately.
Your citations, yeah.
Exactly. So it's looking at how well language models can do that within the machine learning literature.
Okay, so it's a very specific focus, but an important one.
Absolutely.
So we're seeing some real progress in automating pieces of the literature review, but it sounds like there are some pretty big challenges too.
Yeah, there are definitely challenges. One big one is equipping the AI with that deep domain-specific knowledge and the nuanced understanding that human experts have.
Right, because you can't just, read every paper and suddenly become an expert.
Exactly. And we actually saw this with Agent Laboratory. It performed well on other research tasks,
Okay,
but it had a harder time with the literature review.
interesting.
Another point is that many of these frameworks are really leaning towards these fully autonomous workflows,
Yeah.
and that might not always be the ideal approach. Researchers often want to be more involved in the process to be able to explore ideas interactively.
So it's not just about letting the AI take over completely.
Right.
Okay.
And then the issue of generalizability.
Right.
Many of these tools are designed for very specific fields, which limits how broadly they can be applied across different areas of science.
Yeah, that makes sense. So still some work to do.
Definitely.
Now, let's step back and look at the big picture again. How is agentic AI influencing the entire scientific research lifecycle?
Okay, so traditionally, the research life cycle goes something like this. You identify a problem, you review the literature, you come up with a hypothesis,
Right?
you design experiments, you conduct those experiments, you analyze the data, and then you write up your findings and get them published.
The classic scientific method.
Exactly. And agentic AI is starting to make an impact at almost every single stage of that process.
Okay, so let's break it down. How is AI changing the very first stage, that initial spark of an idea?
So, in that ideation phase, AI agents can actually analyze existing research, find gaps in our knowledge, and even propose new research hypotheses. So, there are tools like Research Agent being developed specifically for this purpose. It's like having an AI brainstorming partner that's read everything ever written on a topic.
Wow.
That could really speed things up and lead to more innovative questions.
Yeah, that's really cool. What about the next step, actually designing the experiments to test those ideas?
This is where we see the potential of those autonomous systems like co-scientists really shining. They can design complex experimental setups,
Okay.
optimize parameters, even oversee the execution using robotic automation.
hmm
This not only saves a ton of time and effort, but it can lead to more precise and reproducible results.
So the AI is basically handling all the fiddly bits of
Right.
lab work.
Yeah, it can free up human researchers to focus on the big picture stuff.
That's really interesting. And then once you've got all the data, how is AI helping with the analysis and interpretation?
So, AI agents are incredibly good at processing massive, complex data sets and finding patterns that humans might miss. They can handle and analyze vast amounts of information, which can lead to a much deeper understanding of the experimental outcomes.
So it's not just about crunching numbers, it's about actually extracting meaning from that data.
Exactly.
And finally, what about the task of actually writing up those findings?
So, AI agents are also being developed to automate the writing of research papers, making sure that they're clear, coherent, and follow all the rules of academic publishing. This can save a ton of time and effort in preparing manuscripts.
So it's like having an AI co-author that never gets writer's block.
Exactly, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Okay.
So Agentic AI is offering tools to really enhance almost every step of the research process.
Right.
Now, let's get specific. We talked about chemistry, biology, and material science.
Mm-hmm.
What are some real-world examples of agentic AI making a difference in those fields?
So in chemistry, we're seeing a lot of progress in the discovery and design of new molecules, predicting reactions, planning the synthesis of compounds.
Okay.
So, we already mentioned co-scientists and how it was successful with that palladium-catalyzed cross-coupling.
Right.
But there's also LLM RDF, which uses multiple AI agents to automate the whole synthesis process, from searching the literature to analyzing the results.
hmm
They showed this with the copper tempo catalyzed aerobic alcohol oxidation, for example.
Okay.
And then LNMP is making strides in materials discovery by using AI to predict properties and optimize formulations.
So really speeding up the process of finding new materials.
Yeah, exactly. And for the actual hands-on lab work, there's a robotic system called Organa that uses AI to understand what a chemist wants to do
Okay.
and then autonomously performs experiments, even cutting down the time it takes to do them.
Oh, wow.
And there are a bunch of other cool AI agents being used in chemistry, like ChatMof, ChemCrow, and MooseChem.
It sounds like chemistry is really on the cutting edge of this technology.
It is, yeah.
What about in biology?
So biology is also seeing a transformation, especially in the analysis of complex data, generating hypotheses, planning experiments in areas like genomics, drug discovery, and synthetic biology.
Okay.
So, for example, BIA, or the bioinformatics agent, uses AI to streamline the analysis of single-cell RNA sequencing data, which is this really powerful technique for understanding individual cells.
Mhm.
And it's got this user-friendly chat interface and can adapt its workflow as needed.
Nice.
Then you've got Celligent, which is a multi-agent system for analyzing cRNA-seq data.
Hmm.
Different agents work together to correct for errors, identify cell types, and they've achieved some really impressive results.
Hmm.
And then there's TICE, which is a semi-autonomous assistant for genetic research that can suggest and refine experimental designs, although it still needs human validation.
Okay.
And we're also seeing tools like prote agents being applied in biology, as well as frameworks like AI scientists and CRISPR-GPT that are focused on very specific tasks.
So a lot of exciting applications emerging. You also mentioned material science and general science as areas where this technology is being explored. What's happening there?
So in material science, AI agents are being used to predict material properties and even design entirely new materials with specific characteristics.
Yeah.
And in general science, there's a push to develop more versatile AI agents that can tackle a wider range of research problems.
It was like the ultimate goal is to create an AI scientist that can do it all.
Yeah, for some, that's definitely the dream.
Now, all this sounds incredibly promising,
Yeah.
but what kind of tools and resources are researchers actually using to build and evaluate these AI agents?
So they rely on a few things: implementation tools, data sets, and evaluation metrics.
Okay.
For building the agents, there are frameworks like AutoGen for managing multi-agent systems, MetaGPT for streamlining software development,
Hmm.
and LEDA, which emphasizes cognitive architecture.
Okay.
Other popular tools include Camel, LangChain, and AutoGPT.
So there's a whole toolbox for creating these AI research.
Right.
What about the data they learn from and how we know if they're actually doing a good job?
So data sets are super important for training and benchmarking these agents.
Yeah.
For general scientific reasoning, there's LabBench, which tests things like reasoning, planning, and collaboration.
Okay.
Chemistry uses datasets like MoleculeNet, ZINC, ChemBell, and PubChem, which have tons of information about molecules.
Mm-hmm.
Material science uses MatText, MatSciNLP, MassQA, and MPQules.
Okay.
Biology relies on the AlphaFold protein structure database and mole instructions.
And are these all publicly available?
Most of them are, yeah, but there's still a need for more comprehensive benchmarks, especially in newer areas.
Okay.
And then for evaluating how well they're doing, the metrics really depend on the specific task and the scientific domain.
Right.
For reasoning and planning, we look at things like accuracy, task completion rates, and how coherent their reasoning is.
Hmm.
For experimental prediction, we use metrics like precision, recall, and prediction error. And explainability, or how well they can explain their reasoning, is really important too. Agent Laboratory actually uses metrics inspired by how papers are reviewed at conferences,
Oh, interesting.
looking at things like quality, significance, and clarity.
So they're being held to the same standards as human researchers.
In a way, yeah. They also look at success rates, compare performance to human reviewers, and consider things like usability and user satisfaction. But for more complex tasks, like multi-agent collaboration, standardized metrics are still being developed.
So a lot of work still to be done in figuring out how to measure success.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, obviously, agentic AI has huge potential, but like with any new technology, there are challenges too.
Yeah.
What are some of the key hurdles that we still need to overcome?
Well, a big one is trustworthiness. We need to be sure that these agents are reliable when applied to real-world scientific problems.
Yeah, you don't want them coming up with bogus results.
Exactly. So we need to make sure they're not overfitting to their training data, that their behavior is predictable, and that we have robust ways to test and evaluate them. And we also need to make sure that the reasoning behind their actions is transparent and understandable to humans.
So scientists can double-check their work, essentially.
Exactly.
What other challenges are there?
Well, the practical aspects of implementing and using these systems can be tricky. Ensuring data quality is crucial because bad data can lead to bad results.
Right.
In highly autonomous systems, there's a risk of errors propagating without human intervention, especially in fields like chemistry and biology where safety is critical.
Yeah.
We also need to make sure the AI's goals align with the research objectives and that there's good coordination in multi-agent systems.
Right.
And when AI is controlling experiments, we need to be absolutely certain that safety protocols are followed.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, yeah. But the potential benefits are huge.
So to wrap things up, what are the main takeaways from our deep dive into agentic AI for scientific discovery?
Well, I think it's clear that agentic AI has the potential to really transform science across a wide range of disciplines. It can automate and enhance many stages of the research process, which means we could potentially speed up discoveries and make things more efficient.
And we're already seeing some really cool applications.
We are, yeah.
But it's not a perfect solution yet, right?
Right. There are still challenges, especially in areas like the literature review. We need to get better at things like generating novel research ideas and conducting really thorough reviews.
Okay.
We also need to improve the techniques we use to calibrate these agents to make sure their outputs are accurate and reliable.
So the technology is still evolving.
It is, yeah.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener. As these increasingly autonomous tools become more common in science, How might they change not only how research is done, but also the kinds of questions scientists choose to ask in the first place?
That's a good question.
And what role will human intuition play in this increasingly automated world of discovery? It's a fascinating thing to consider as this field continues to develop. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.